is that going to change the number of classrooms we have since we're consolidating?
In some places we have pre-K classrooms that might have 12 or 13 or more students in it. Other places we might have a pre-K class that has 6. And so, yes, probably. But we'll still remain within the designated student-teacher ratio that we're looking to achieve. One question that has also come up from a teacher standpoint, and Mr. Alvis mentioned it earlier, we believe that if we go to 2 different pre-K through 5 models, if we have 2 different pre-K through 5 schools, we will be able to absorb 8 teaching positions. If it is the intermediate primary model, we can absorb 10 teachers through that model. And it's just the way, it would, in a perfect world, you could say you have this many second graders that live here and they live in this zone and this, but that's not the case. But by going to a primary and intermediate model, there's because of that configuration would enable us to save absorb 2 additional teaching positions. Okay. Yes, sir.
3 or 4 things are rolling around in my mind right now, but one at a time. It's imperative that Bristol considers a new elementary school, wherever it's going to be. Those of us who've been around a little while, you school board members, 3 of you are young things, but Randy and I have been a long time. On your presentation there, it showed that in a half a century before 1975 or so, all the elementary schools were built, give or take a year or 2. In this half century since then, not a single elementary school has been built. Now, it's quite obvious Bristol doesn't have any money. That's no reflection on any city council members, but it's a fact, isn't it, on the piece of paper. Consolidation must be done, but if you remember, consolidation can go too far. When Washington Lee went online and then Van Pelt went online as one of our schools, when Van Pelt was opened in 1975, and I have to say I watched Van Pelt being built from across the street. Still live there now, so that's my disclaimer for living in Van Pelt area. There were 6 elementary schools. Some of you might not know that. There was Van Pelt, Douglas, Highland View, Thomas Jefferson, Washington Lee, Stonewall. Douglas was a 5 and 6 school. We went from 6, now we're at 4. I have to say that I'm adamantly against going to 1. And I think that if you build an additional school at Van Pelt, you've got 2 buildings up there, but you've still got 1 site. I think that's a real injustice to the citizens of Bristol. If you look at the map, which isn't up there, but if you look at it, if you were to look at the map, Van Pelt is at the far end, eastern end of Bristol. If the Van Pelt site were somewhere toward the central part, it'd be great. But you're taking Stonewall Jackson away from the neighborhood, and nothing's going to be there. You're taking Highland View away, and nothing's going to be there. You're taking Washington Lee away, and nothing's going to be there. If Van Pelt is the site, and if you, Dr. Perigin and some others have alluded to a primary and an intermediate school, well, that can only work at Van Pelt. That's obvious.
It would work better.
I think it'd work. It couldn't work anywhere else because it'd be too expensive. I lost my train of thought. Anyway, you're putting all the kids in the east end of the town, and the central part of the town, western end of town, will have no neighborhood identification. And I think that's important. We've seen some things go on in Wise County. It's going on in Sullivan County. We saw it going on in all these counties in southwest Virginia. That's a lot bigger problem than we had. And it's obvious you can get all the kids to one school here in a matter of a few minutes. If the school is built at Van Pelt, and I love these people and worked well with them, but you're doing the best service for the bus drivers. They're going to get more time on the road. But that be as it may. I do want to speak against using Van Pelt for the site, although it is probably the cheapest, the best, and all that sort of thing as a site goes. But it is not the place to put the other facility, whether it's part of Van Pelt as an add-on to Van Pelt or a new building. there needs to be some equality in Bristol. I don't have the solution for it, but there needs to be some elementary geographic equality in Bristol. And by putting everything at Van Pelt, we're missing on that. I do recall 4 or 5 years ago, I made these same remarks at Van Pelt when we had a hearing at Van Pelt. Thank you. I spoke out against putting out. We had this same process. You remember? I don't know, Steve, you weren't on the board, but all the rest of you were. Randy, you were. Yeah. Randy, you weren't.
I think so.
Yeah. I mean, Randy Alvis. You've been on there. Dinosaurs run when you came on the board, Andy. But the two superintendents who worked on this, well, not at the same time, they were not for having one location for all the elementary kids. And we went through that process then, and of course you had to table it for several years, and I understand that. And I really do appreciate the work and the effort you're doing, very conscientious to try to bring this all together. And I, for one, know very well that we need another elementary school. There's no doubt about that. I don't want to tell you when I was principal, it was old then, but I was young. Anyway, I just want to say that I think you need to consider Van Pelt's a great site, but it's not the site to put this school.
Thank you.
Let me just add, Mr. Shanks. Do I need that? You hear me now? In 2010, when we decided that we were going to go to a 2 elementary school module, that was the intent. We were trying to find a location that was centrally located on this end to actually take care of the kids down toward this area. So, we would have 2 elementary schools, either centrally located or one on each end of town. And that's still our aim, even though with this new process that we're going through, cost-wise, it's going to make it look like that Van Pelt is actually the best site, even though that's not what we've actually agreed on. But I think in answer to your question, and I agree with you that, we need to give, I've got kids that live out in the Westfield area, even though they won't benefit from the new school because they'll be in the middle school by that time. But my grandkids live up on the other end. But I've gone through 2 redistricting consolidations, redistricting, since I've been on the board in 2008, and they weren't pretty. And I'm not sure how much longer that we'll be able to wait to find a spot that we can actually afford to build a site that's central without having to redistrict again. And I don't know if there's an answer to that. Yes, if we could find a place down here, I'd jump all over that, and we'd have 2 pre-K through 5 elementary schools down here. And hopefully, who knows, before these meetings are over, somebody may pop up and say, hey, I got some land over here. And that's what I'm hoping for. That would be the perfect world. But like you said, just talking about Mr. White being a dinosaur, I'm a little bit of a dinosaur myself. I was born and raised here in Bristol, and went to Douglas at 1st and 2nd grade, then went to George Washington Elementary School, 2nd and 3rd grade, then went to Douglas, 5th and 6th grade, when they changed to an actual intermediate school. So I've been through some change, and I think a lot of people in Bristol are kind of, I'm not going to say afraid of change, but kind of leery of change. But I think that, our children deserve a new elementary school. Yes, in a perfect world, if we can get one on both ends of towns, that would be great. But I just don't know how much longer we'll be able to actually wait, especially once we get into the nuts and bolts of it. We've already been told that Holland View is functionally obsolete. So if we may not have a choice of shutting Holland View down, it may shut itself down. And like I said, then we'll be all topped out at every other elementary school with no other way to do it. But, that's why we're having these meetings, is to hear those type of ideas. And I agree with you that, yes, the kids on the west end of town or the south end of town are losing and maybe spending a little extra time on the bus. But I just want to do what's best for the kids all together in the city, and that's the bottom line, is whatever is student learning driven. And my kids deserve a 21st century school. Your kids deserve a 21st century school. They need to get the same type of education, which our teachers are phenomenal, our administrators are phenomenal. But when you start seeing what Northern Virginia has and then what we've got down here, we just don't stack up. But still yet, our learning, we deserve what everybody else does. But I'm thinking that, I just don't want to go through another redistricting. Is Van Pelt probably the best site? It looks like it on paper, yes. It does, because that way, you'll save money, you got this up there, you got that up there. But what about the people that live down here? How's it going to affect them? I don't know. I can't answer that. But anyway, like I said, I understand what you're saying, and I feel you. But I just don't know the answer to that outside the fact of somebody just coming up with some property down here that, we actually could do that without a cost to the city.
Let me just add that before you start, Mr. White. I fairly confidently say that I've exhausted the GIS system over at City Hall trying to find properties that were 10 acres or bigger. I mean, I've wore poor old Kelly Miller out going through trying to get, well, if this guy came together with this guy, could we, and we've approached folks about selling land to us that we think would be more centrally located and good sites. And we've approached them again, and then one more time. And, we've not had any luck. We've had multiple conversations with different landowners trying to find a more geographically central. I would say student central, we're pretty central anywhere we are because it's such a small footprint. But if you just look at geographically, we've really exhausted efforts. So we're still open if somebody comes up and says, hey, we've got this property right here in the center of town we would love to sell or donate. We're all open arms for sure. The one other thing, and I think Mr. White has a comment, and then we'll get back over here, is what I don't want to happen on my watch as I lead this division is I don't want something to happen at Highland View and for us to have to close that school down, for us to have to move our fifth graders to the middle school, for us to have to overcrowd every other school in the division and put them in old, outdated schools. That's why I think the time is now, and we have to act quick because we have a great window of opportunity to make this happen. And so, that's not a scare tactic or anything like that, but that's why that I think that time is of the essence. Mr. White.
Yeah. Bill and I go back years and years in the system. And ever since I've been teaching in the school system and involved with it since 1970, we've talked about getting rid of Highland View. We needed to replace Highland View. What? Is this an oh, like that. It was Tyrone doing it. Anyway, so this is not something new. And when we opened our new school board office and I started collecting the history of the schools, I found out that from the inception of Bristol, Virginia, every decade, a new school came online. One new school every decade until we built Van Pelt. And from 1980 on, there's not been a new school built. I don't understand why. But that's one of the problems, the major problems that we've had. We've known that we've had this condition. We've known that we need a new school, but in the city, the city council are the ones who have to come up with this. The last one that we did wasn't even a new one, though. When we remodeled the middle school, we had to acquire 4 properties to go along with that. down there where the girls' club thing is now, because we didn't have enough green space